Imagine waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of a man's voice. He is saying, "I have a knife at your neck. Don't make a sound. Get up and come with me." Imagine your younger sister sleeping next to you. You have heard this man's voice before, but in the dark you can't make out a face. Sounds frightening, doesn't it? Just think about how 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart felt. Elizabeth Smart was born on November 3rd, 1987, in Salt Lake City, Utah. She is the second of 6 children and was just living the life of a normal 14-year-old. She was only a few days away from graduating middle school and was so excited to move up to high school. Her entire life changed overnight. On June 5th, 2002, she was kidnapped in the middle of the night. After the strange man had Elizabeth grab some shoes and a pair of clothes, he took her on a long walk up the mountain behind her house. They walked for hours until they reached a camp in a grove of trees. On that first day, she met her captors, Brian David Mitchell and Wanda Barzee, who went by the names Emmanuel and Hepzibah for religious purposes. Smart was cabled to a tree and was only allowed enough room to roam around the camp. For 9 months, she was raped daily, forced to consume large amounts of alcohol, and starved for weeks on end while Mitchell journeyed to the city to preach, which was actually a time where he partied, drank, and sometimes got arrested and sent to jail. During that time, Smart and Barzee sat at their camp in the middle of nowhere without food or water. For the first 4 months, she was kept captive just a few miles from her house. On the night that Elizabeth was kidnapped, her little sister, Mary Catherine, was also awakened by the strange man that entered her room. Fearful for her life, she pretended to be asleep and was scared to get up from her bed and tell her parents what had happened.
The next thing I remember after going to sleep was Mary Catherine coming around the bed to Lois's side and saying, "Mom, somebody's taken Elizabeth." And, I'm sitting there in bed, I'm thinking, she's had a bad nightmare. Mary Catherine remained in the room with Lois. As I went from room to room checking, it became more and more of a reality that, she was not here. I came down the steps, looked through my office, went into our family room. She was not there. And it really erupted when Lois came down the stairs and turned on the lights in our kitchen and saw the screen cut. Mary Catherine had come down and said, "You're not going to find her. A man's taken her." And you just can't even imagine what was Elizabeth going through. Lois was yelling, "Call 911," and that was the first thing that happened.
When she finally did get up around 4 a.m., the horrific news caused a huge search conducted by the local police station and volunteers that came and searched the woods behind her house. The search lasted for months, and people came every day to help the Smarts. The police interrogated 9-year-old Mary Catherine and tried to get her to tell him who the mysterious man was. At first, she recognized the voice, but couldn't piece it together until 7 months had passed. Near the end of 2002, Mitchell realized that winter was going to be a hard time for them in Utah. So they decided that they should move to California so that they could stay warm. They stayed in California for 5 months.
In early March of 2003, we had ended up in California, and they were talking of new places to go, like New York and Boston, and all I could think was, oh my goodness, we can't go to those places because if nobody found me here, why on earth would anybody find me there? I remember turning around and facing my captors and just telling them, oh, I have this feeling, and I know that God would never speak to me, but I know he'll speak to you because you're his servant. You're practically his best friend. Could you please ask him if we're supposed to go back to Salt Lake? Because this feeling, it just won't leave me, and this is just crazy coming from me, but if you ask him, I know he'll tell you. And so he did end up asking, and that was how it was decided we'd go back to Salt Lake.
As soon as they reached Salt Lake City, police cars surrounded them. Mitchell and Barzee were arrested, and Elizabeth was reunited with her family. After both of their trials in 2010, Brian David Mitchell was sentenced to life in prison, and Wanda Barzee was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Barzee was released in September of 2018 and since has been walking free. Today, Elizabeth Smart is happily married to Matthew Gilmore and has 3 children. She is also an activist and advocate for missing persons and sexual abuse survivors. She took the 9 worst months that anyone could ever imagine and turned it into a book called My Story.
But I know that we all have a choice. I know that when we are faced with trials, we have a choice. We can give in and surrender, or we can fight and we can move forward. And as I've been able to go out and share my story and speak with different people, I have learned so much. I have come to a point in my life that I can say, although I would never wish it upon myself, and I certainly never would wish it upon anyone else, I'm grateful for what has happened to me because of what it's taught me, because of the perspective it's given me and the empathy I've felt for other survivors. I am grateful that I can make a difference. I'm grateful that I can speak out, and especially for victims of sexual abuse who haven't been able to speak out for themselves yet. It is so traumatic. It is so scary coming forward and saying, I was sexually abused. I was hurt. Someone stole something from me that I'll never get back. But I have to tell you, it is so important to come forward and share your stories and speak out about it, even if it's not to your community, even if it's not on a larger scale, but at least to law enforcement, so that we can stop those people that are out there taking advantage of other people. It is so important. So I have to encourage every single one of you, when you are faced with a trial, don't give up. Don't surrender. Move forward, because you never know what you'll be able to do with it. You'll never know the lives you'll be able to touch.